Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies and the characters that make us feel seen. And today is such a privilege because I don't often get to have a co-host on the show who, for a solid year, has had people saying they've made the best movie of the year. But I have been hearing the title of the movie Blue Heron for so long as it has made its way and been internationally acclaimed through festivals throughout the world. And it is now beginning its limited opening journey in LA and New York, and then it is opening up more slowly across the rest of the United States. Sophy Romvari, what else did people need to know about you before we get started, besides the fact that you have made the many times over acclaimed movie of the year?
At first, I was like, who are you talking about?
We have a mystery guest? Do we have a Zoom bomb? I can't wait to meet him.
So you said how do I feel? Is that
What
what?
what else did people need to know about you before we get
Oh,
started? They're gonna know this
oh,
one thing. Are there any
yeah.
other elements we should bring into the fold before we begin?
Know that I'm eating this sumo orange, and
Great.
that's the first piece of fruit I've had in several weeks, probably.
Oh no.
Which is very important. I don't know. I feel incredibly grateful. I feel incredibly, supported by everyone who's helping bring this movie into the world, and the responses to the film have been unbelievable. I'm actually the biggest fear I have right now is that this is just the peak of my life, and this is
You know, I was once I this is a non sequitur, but like, let's just switch it up a little bit. I remember back in like the mid 2010s, it was like a year or so after Teenage Dream had come out by Katy Perry. And that album did so well. I'm a Katy cat. I like the music, but I was like even the fan of hers that I am, I was had like a conversation with a friend where I was getting actually like personally upset, being like, what are you supposed to do when you've made something that's this big a deal? I was like, guys, no matter how good of an album she makes ever again, it's probably not gonna be Teenage Dream. Like what do you do with that? She's so young. Like, how do you even? And then I was like Adele, she made 21. Like, what do you even do after? Like, how do you make a next thing? And so, like, I'm glad you brought that up because I think about that sometimes. With just like, it's not fair to tell somebody in some way that they've made the best thing that anybody made that year, because you're like, Jesus Christ, I'm not done yet,
I
guys.
mean, I totally, but regardless of like the quality of the work, there's so many other things that go into it, which is timing and, the reception of the film. It could have been that the film is what it is, but then I didn't get, into the right festivals or
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about by the right people or that people didn't understand it the way that they're understanding it. Like there's so many things that are go beyond the quality of work, and it's
100%.
that's where I feel so lucky and grateful is that so many things have lined up and I obviously that is a testament to the work, but that can also happen where work, we've heard it a million times, like work that does not get its due, as it happens in the time, I guess, retroactively maybe does. And so I feel, especially working with a distributor like Janus, it's, I get stumbled for words every time I talk about it because it's a company that I have so much respect for and had, grown up watching the movies that they restore, that they do the work to preserve, and to be in conversation at all with that work is just, as a filmmaker, is beyond beyond a dream come true. Like it wasn't even on our list of distributors because we're okay. So it really, yeah, it is something where I feel like so many things have lined up perfectly because I know, I mean, the film was made of pure heart. I think like everyone who worked on it really understood what this film was about and what their role was in collaborating on this project. And I feel very supported because I've been making work for so long that's very personal. And there's a lot of people that I think can see the work, like what led to this
Mm-hmm.
throughout my career. And so it feels very cumulative. So anyway, all those things lead to this very this high, this moment. And it's yeah, I will never have another first feature, and I will
Yeah.
never have another first feature distributed by Janus. It's like that first is this, I'm in it right now, so I'm really trying to be as present as possible. And yeah. So anyway, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, you've been present in talking about Blue Heron for some time now, but it is, I would say, unique among how people will watch it, the way that it plays with time and memory, and how it moves together across periods of life of your sort of protagonist character, that your central family in it, which is largely representative of your family and your experience. Could you explain Blue Heron for us, for the folks at home?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask that. No.
I was like, well, it's like, do I try? Do I leave this to the maestro for whom it is personal? I wasn't quite sure actually whether it was better to ask or better to like
Yeah.
sit here and tell you your movie at you.
Well, I mean, I love to hear how people describe it because I do think it's a film that is very felt and
Hmm.
it's about the atmosphere and about the experience of watching it. When you describe the concept or the story, it's like it sounds like any other story. It's a
Right.
family, it's a family drama with some light time travel, you know?
Absolutely. A family drama with some light time travel. And the family at the core of it is a Hungarian family who has relocated to Western Canada. And it is the central character, Sasha, is we begin with her as a sort of begin with her as a little girl.
Mm,
And we experience her life with her parents, her mom, and there's a stepdad
mhm,
and older brothers. And one of those brothers um, starts to manifest some challenging behavioral issues that metastasize into things that are more and more difficult and sort of more and more harrowing to deal with. And it's a movie sort of broken into the parts of Sasha's life, early and older, as she is looking back and processing and beginning to make a movie of her own,
mhm.
and to try to more fully understand the circumstances of her older brother, who struggled, and what might have been done in a different time. And like you said, it's a family drama with some light time travel. Um,
You did beautifully. That was really well described.
well, and this was, I had not heard of the movie before that you had brought to discuss today, but it was so interesting watching it for the first time ever as
Mm.
something, in extension of sort of like your thought process for things that you connect. So please let's jump into the movie that you've brought for us to discuss today. What are we here to talk about?
Sure, yeah. So well, I was posed the question by you guys, what is a film that makes me made me feel seen?
Hmm.
And it actually, I had a hard time coming up with something because in terms of films that make me feel seen, I think I had a hard time coming up with something that was quite specifically fulfilling that role. 'Cause so many
Hmm.
of the films I like, are completely unrelated to my experiences. The
Hmm.
films that are the most personal, I make. So actually it was an interesting question for me to think about in terms of feeling seen. And so I would say this is actually a film that I haven't revisited it in years.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a film that was even a reference for this film. But in retrospect, when you guys posed that question, I realized, it was an early film that did make me feel like represented in a way. So yeah, the film is called Crazy.
Hmm.
It's in sort of an acronym style of the spelling of the word, and it's a early Jean-Marc Vallée movie, Quebecois filmmaker from Canada who sadly passed away a few years ago, but who had a very diverse career.
He
And
really did. I feel like you rarely see people anymore who are afforded the permission to have such a range of things they get to make. If you guys know the name Jean-Marc Vallée and you're like, where do I know that from? Not Big Little Lies, maybe. Like
yeah,
maybe Sharper Objects, maybe Reese Witherspoon's Wild. Like this
yeah.
is he did so much.
Yeah, yeah. He was I think it's growing up in Canada. There's also, it's very limited the number of filmmakers who actually end up making work that is seen and appreciated outside of Canada,
Mm.
or even honestly within Canada. It's a for some reason it's a large country, very spread out. It's difficult to have people really give Canadian films a platform, and so it's rare. And so I remember seeing that film and feeling a weird sense of like it felt unique to me that this film was
Mm.
made within Canada and that I loved it and it was so evocative and because so many of the films you grow up watching in Canada are American or European,
Mm.
for such a big country, there isn't that many films that are known outside of Canada or filmmakers. It's a small group. And so yeah, I remember feeling sort of inspired by that. I was, around 20 years old. I saw it in film school. I think it was shown to us in school as a example of production design
Hmm.
because it's quite, it's a very colorful, very vivid, nostalgic movie.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we can break it down however you think.
Yeah, yeah. The production design aspect of it is so especially interesting because it's a movie that takes place over like about 3 decades.
Yeah.
And but it largely revolves, not strictly, but largely revolves around this family home. And so the home, there has to be this sort of fixed in place aspect to it that like your everyday suburban family home, like the way they can feel like these places out of time, these capsules of another era from when
Yeah.
like the parents and the like first started like settling their lives there while at the same time the kids change
Yeah.
and the kids progress. But in the case of Crazy, the main character, our point of view character is the second youngest of five sons
Yes.
in this we're in Quebec and of this French Canadian family, devout mom and dad, especially mom.
Mhm.
Dad's like an angry Catholic, but a Catholic still. And our central character exhibits sort of telltale details of this might be a young gay boy that we are meeting at the beginning of our story. And again, I just said like you're not really conservative, Kev, but loving family. And then the collection of boys that he grows up among. And we are going through. He has like a big Led Zeppelin painting behind his bed when he's an adolescent, and he grows up listening to Patsy Cline with his dad. And then when we enter 1980, like he's very visibly in the punk era. So he is very much the roadmap of how the times change throughout the movie, and everybody's a little bit more subtle, if not static, it feels like, in
Yeah.
their aesthetic presentation. But this is also a large family in Canada, and they are sort of their emotional geography is sort of heavily organized around the oldest boy, Raymond, who struggles with addiction, and then the second to youngest, our main character, who he's a problem because he's probably gay.
Yeah.
And he also seems to be, according to a local psychic, he is been chosen by God to have a special place in this world. And
Mhm.
his mom is very powerfully convinced that he is like a healer anointed by Christ.
Yes.
So in that way, he is kind of an odd duck. But like the sense of within his own household, but the sense of sort of like the family organized around the member that presents a sort of unique behavioral challenge, and the way that that affects, I like there was a I'm just yammering now, but at one point there's like there would become like a rule in our house by the time they're both like adults, like we don't talk about Raymond the brother and we don't talk about me, and those are like the two unspoken. We don't talk about me and we don't talk about him, and then if we don't do that, then kind of everything is fine, which I thought was really
Mm.
interesting when and it's yeah. But just like watching this movie and thinking of your movie and in terms of the subjectivity of memory and like a central character's reliability as narrator, and like the presentation so much of his family is centrally through his point of view and everybody's sort of a refraction of him, and then
Yeah.
like thinking of like how you told your story and the story of a somewhat fictionalized family as well. Yeah, I thought they were, I was like, well, this is a great, I honestly love this as a double feature, these two.
Interesting. I mean, you're reminding me of so many of the nuances that I'd forgotten about in terms of, yeah, the mother's obsession with him being like anointed and these kinds of elements. And yeah, and it is a really complicated representation of a queer character that I think
Mm-hmm.
was at an interesting time. 'Cause, I can't remember what year the film came out.
2005, which I think is an even extra interesting layer of a fascinating and layered depiction of a queer central character, when like this is Canada, but like when I think of like movies in the States in the 2000s, we were definitely not doing balanced queer protagonists. We were not
No,
doing problematic queer protagonists that like through their self-hatred were like beating up other probably gay kids at school.
exactly. I know. And I think that the nuance of his journey and of his character and it kind of goes off the rails at a certain point as I recall, but because it's they try to tackle such a big chunk of someone's life, this journey. It's so encompassing. But I remember feeling like it was really an admirable impression of yeah, what makes this guy into who he is, and what from his early life into his adulthood. And I think that's something I'm interested in Blue Heron is like what are the elements of this character's life that lead into her becoming who she is.
Hmm.
And I think what I loved about Crazy was the sibling dynamics and like how those things were depicted in that film. And I really related to, being that younger sibling and the chaos of the siblings around you, and especially with one specific brother who's struggling with their mental health and with addiction. And I think it's very I was really taken with like the way it did that. And I found, yeah, I found it very emotional, actually. I found, that obviously when the brother passes away in that film, it was very, I hadn't seen a film deal with sibling dynamics in that way. And
Hmm.
I found it very, um, yeah, cathartic. And it was inspiring to me at the time. I wasn't quite ready to, make the work that I ended up making. And I slowly started to make, short films that reflected the my family's experience and my experience, but I wasn't there yet. So it was nice to see this film early on in my trajectory. Like I was, yeah, first year film school, and I remember actually I wrote a letter to Jean-Marc Vallée after reading this, or after watching this film, because we were asked to do a practicum with someone, and I thought maybe
Mm.
shadow him on set. And I wrote this like very vulnerable letter where I spoke about my brother. I spoke about my connection to the content of the film and how much it inspired me. And I wasn't sure at the time if the film was personal for him, but I kind of projected that it might have been.
Hmm. You
And
watching it really feels like it is. Like I had to try and like be like, okay, don't like I had to look up Jean-Marc Vallée and I was like, this guy have a family, this guy have kid like I knew details
yeah,
about him, but I suddenly had to affirm them because I was like, did Jean-Marc Vallée grow up into like a gay man with like a partner and like late in life out like quit? I had to like remind myself that he has an established bio that I could easily find because there is something that feels so journal like pulling from one's journal to make
yeah.
this.
It feels very raw and it feels very personal. And I think I love that he's able to tap into that. I think there was some sense of, I think the co-writer, maybe there was some personal
Hmm.
elements, but I wrote this letter and I still have it somewhere, but it was I couldn't figure out how to get it to him.
Fair.
I yeah, I was like, I didn't have IMDb Pro or whatever. I didn't know how to contact his agent or what. No entry point, but I still I'm glad that I wrote the letter because it showed the
Hmm.
impact that it had on me and the fact that I wanted I wanted him to know that it had an impact on me, and it's really stuck with me over the years. And then when he passed away, I was really he passed away quite young, and
He did.
there was something very that loss was really felt, and especially because I did wish to have this connection with him. And again, there's so few filmmakers in Canada that I feel like I don't know what it is, but that make it out of Canada.
Hmm.
Or actually, more importantly, make it out of Canada and stay in Canada, and have their films become accessible to an international audience, but then stay within Canada. Because there's much more precedent for like actors or filmmakers that leave and become American citizens. And,
Right.
obviously like Ryan Gosling and Jim Carrey and
Hmm.
Cameron and it's endless. There's so many, but we don't even think of them as Canadian because they leave and
Right.
become sort of indoctrinated by the American dream.
Well, it's almost like there's like like hearing that now, there's like this nostalgic quality to me. I'm like, remember?
Yeah.
Remember when people looked over the border and they were like, what a place, what a dream, what a possibility. I'm like,
Oh.
what a nice thought.
I know, I know. I mean, but
I'm
it's
glad you guys wanted to pour over the border at some point.
at some point, but I think that, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to unpack it, but I think like because the US is so much more driven by capitalism than
Mm,
Canada, Canada is also, it's more of a socialist construct, but it really is also capitalist. But
mhm. But
there's
the
a
way we fund the arts is so different.
yes, exactly. Like I made this film majority with grants.
Hmm.
It was a Canadian-Hungarian co-production with a very small pot of private equity to cover the music licensing. But essentially, it was made for grants. With
Hmm.
the budget was just an entirely, grant government money, and like I could not have made this film in the U.S. as
Hmm.
a American because I would have to consider things like the market, how is this going to do in the market? I mean, which
Hmm.
actors do I need to cast? I wouldn't be able to cast necessarily like European actors, non-actors, children, unknown,
Hmm.
and it's like it gave me so much more freedom and flexibility. But now it's actually having a life in the American system. So it feels like it's really the best of both worlds. And that's something I'm really happy I was able to tap into. And looking at a film like Crazy, I don't know how much it tapped into the American audience, but
Hmm.
obviously his career did.
Yeah.
And he had I don't know if he moved to LA. I don't know what he did in his life. But I think he still maintained his Canadian status for sure.
Hmm.
I believe he passed away in Quebec. But it's yeah, there's not that many examples of it. Cronenberg is the most obvious and the
Of
most
course.
known, who was somehow fucking. So he's doing a Q&A for me on Friday. He's going to moderate a Q&A for me.
Congratulations! That's so cool.
It's crazy. Like it's completely insane, but it's like the Canadian dream. It's like, yeah, it's so that's gonna be our opening in Toronto. Like he's doing the moderation for that Q&A and
That's
I
amazing.
it's gonna be really hard to like let him ask me questions.
You're like, yes, please do sit and listen to me. Listen to my gems of wisdom. Well, you
Yeah.
guys, if you're out there and you're listening from Canada and you're like, how do I get my film to matriculate across the border? Simply make a movie heralded as the best movie of the year, for months and months on end of its rolling festival releases. Don't worry about it. No, but we had the writer, director Grace Glowicki on as well,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
she
yeah.
spoke about the same thing of just certainly some the constraints within it's not like a wild amount of money, but for the kind of thing where she's like working with friends in experimental clown theater to make like a movie in Dead Lover that looks like aesthetically like a middle school film production. It
Yeah.
is like her and her whole creative community pulling off what feels like spontaneous live theater in front of you, but it's a movie. Like that was because she got grants in Canada and had
Yes,
total say
100%.
over everything that was happening.
Yeah, like I'm sure she can speak to this better than I can, but like imagine her pitching that to like investors in the US, it's just it's a different ball game, and it's like it allows you to make the work that you want to make within limitations,
Sure.
which can be really fruitful, but it also I think the issue is oftentimes people try to make films that are bigger than their britches for the budget,
Mm,
it's like they want to make a sort of American indie style film, but with like a sub $500,000 budget, and it's very difficult to do. So it's more about embracing those limitations and making them work for you and writing for them. And yeah, Grace and so many filmmakers of this generation, Matt Johnson as well, or Matthew Rankin.
mm,
You know, there's just filmmakers who are taking risks creatively that are paying off because they're being really sincere to their own vision.
mhm,
Heather Young in Halifax, like
mm.
just filmmakers that are really like they have a auteur sensibility, and I think it's and very different filmmakers across the board, yeah. So it's cool. It's cool that we're having a moment. Chandler, Levac, yeah.
We're having a moment. Canada's moment in cinema should be eternal. Let's keep extending the moment, y'all. Another thing that I was thinking very specifically about while I was watching Crazy and thinking about your movie was the role that music plays in your film, and the way that you've talked about the significance of, like you said, an addition of like private equity financing to make sure you could get the music that you wanted,
Yeah.
and not even then, like being able to get every song that you would have had your heart set on. And I wanted to hear from you, with music playing such a, like you talk about, I think it's like in the first half of the movie you said, like it's all diegetic in the first half of the movie, coming from a radio, like it coming like part of the environment. And where in the process does the music start playing for you with something like this, where it feels like such a part, it feels almost like it's a part of the production design,
Yeah.
watching it in your film?
Yeah, I like describing it that way. That's nice because it is a part of the actual environment. And it was written into the script that there would be music, coming from majority the dad's computer and then from radios or the car radio. And that was really driven by something I noticed in the home video footage that I watched that my
Mm.
dad took of me and my brothers growing up is there was always music playing in the background it always felt like score. Like it always made
Mhm.
very mundane and like simple moments feel grand. And like I love that juxtaposition of, Mozart, but it's just like us eating peanut butter toast or which is yeah, that creates it gives meaning to something that is ultimately very simple and
Mm.
I wanted to imbue the film with that and so I didn't have every song picked out. There was some that I had my eyes or my heart set on that some that I could get, some that I couldn't get, but the whole process is it's I could do a whole, masterclass on it. I'm sure any filmmaker who's tried to license music can speak to the pain of it because it really is, you think it's going to be expensive, it's more expensive than you think. Like if you think you can't even imagine. It's just like a song you think is completely unknown is gonna blow your mind. It's
I have a friend who directed a movie that was about a DJ.
oh yeah.
So and it was the biggest war that he w was go a win ongoing with production the entire time was fighting for music. Like
Yeah.
he there was so much less friction around any other like note or thing that he wanted to do with the movie, but his music budget just kept getting more and more expensive. It was unbelievable. Even like I've talked about this so many times with my wife, like she'll like something like she's in PR. She's thinking about this stuff, but some people will be watching a movie and like a song will come on if she knows it. She's like, that must have been expensive. I'm like, you know it. You
Yeah.
know it was. It's like, you
Yeah.
want to know how a movie got expensive? This is when you hear this, that's how a movie gets expensive.
I know, like a budget can be like, $100,000 for the movie, like 600,000 for the music. So,
You're
yeah.
like, guys, we went over, we entered a new SAG territory of minimums,
But
so we're in a whole new classification of movie because I really needed these songs.
it's insane because it didn't used to be this way. Like there was more paths towards like collaborative, letter writing to the artist and these kinds of things. But all of
Lupita Nyong'o has talked about doing that for when she was in the zombie movie Little Monsters, wrote a passion letter to Taylor Swift
right.
because her song Shake It Off was like a fundamental plot element of the movie, and she gave the blessing nod to the movie to use it for basically pennies.
I know, and I think I know it's because most artists have sold their catalogs to the big
Oh.
labels, and when you license a song, you have to get the master and the use agreement on both sides, and they usually will match each other.
Uh-huh.
And if the label decides that they want, $40,000, then the other side also will come in with 40, and then suddenly have an $80,000 3-second clip or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So it's like whack-a-mole. Like it really is insane. It was very it was challenging in a way that I agree with your friend. Like it really was the most. I felt like I was losing my mind. I would fall asleep listening to Spotify playlists of like 90s nostalgia music and just trying to like find alts after alts after alts. And I
Uh-huh.
had 3 or 4 music supervisors who were all volunteering their time to try to help find the right songs. And we had a group chat called Good, Fast, Cheap, Pick Two. It's true with music is like if you start a year in, you could get, a big song if you like find all these different angles to like to track down whatever the artist, if there's ways potentially, but you can't do it quickly.
Uh-huh.
It's like you have to really prioritize like what it is that you want. And music was very, very important to this film. And so I'm so happy with the soundtrack that we ended up
Hmm.
with.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's very uniquely like a big part of it was just like wanting to emulate my dad's taste and like the
Mhm.
taste that I grew up with. And so when he was watching the movie, he was like, "How did you get that? Like what it, and it's I wanted the music to be of the taste of a character and of a person and not just kind of random nostalgic music. Like this
Mhm.
is a curated sensibility. It's like this German like 80s kind of experimental music that is unique to like an individual,
Mhm.
much music. And I think I could have done a score and it would have saved us a lot of time. But here we are.
Here we are, and heralded a critical acclaim. You made the right choices, and another an aspect of like what going into your like technical going into your movie like filmmaking, the it's not a hybrid documentary. That's not what it is. It is, but there are like verite elements of it, in your short films like more like still processing. There is absolutely documentary is a part of work you've done, and something I wanted to hear from you about that I anytime I know people have worked in the arena, I am always interested how the sort of documentary training
Yeah.
worked in your thought processing for like day of shoot. Like when you know you're putting something together, one of my favorite things that I read you talking about in making the movie was like that if you just kind of saw the kids because like you're working with young actors, like also another challenge, like if they kind of started doing something interesting, it was like a hey, roll on that and let's just see if we've got something. And a couple things did make it into the movie. So I wanted to talk about like that kind of documentary awareness, that kind of like being on your feet, like that sort of training and how it works in your toolkit as a maker of like fiction features as well.
Yeah. I love how you contextualize that. Thank you.
Sure,
It's
yeah, of course.
no, it is one of my, favorite topics to think about because it really gets to the root of like how film is a construction and how no matter what the approach is, it's always going to be a construction. And that's how
Mhm,
I think about genre, documentary versus fiction. It's just they're just different approaches to getting an outcome that you want as a filmmaker. And for me, I've because I spent so long making shorts that kind of blended these two approaches together, I found, okay, so if you give someone who's not an actor the context and sort of a space to play within,
mhm.
they're going to feel more at ease than if you are asking them to do these very specific things. And so, for example, the social worker, the single social worker on the Zoom call, um, who has the conversation with adult Sasha, she was actually my family's social worker
Right, yeah.
when I was a kid, and she's someone I reconnected with when I was working on the research and the script, and it was a very intense and emotional experience to reconnect with her, and we had these very yeah, difficult but also really beautiful conversations.
Hmm.
And as I continued to develop the project, I asked her, would you be open to being involved in the project? And I think having made all these short films that kind of I have a short film called Pumpkin Movie where I'm in it as well as one of my best friend from high school, and she's on a Zoom call, and she's not an actor, and I knew that if I put her at a distance, and she was not feeling the sense of the camera, that she could just perform as herself.
Mm,
And this creates a dynamic between me and Leah that feels very natural, and it's
mm,
just documenting our friendship.
mhm.
So having done that, I was able to apply that to Blue Heron with Bonnie, the social worker, because she was on Zoom and she was calling in and having a conversation with Amy Zimmer, and it was a live conversation. And but Bonnie knew, use these names and talk about your personal experiences with my family, but just use these names.
Oh.
It's incredible that someone just giving them a limitation, a context, and it feels like a naturalistic performance. And
Hmm.
she's basically replicating a conversation I had with her, but because she's not in a room being told, all the pressure that comes with being on set, she's
Hmm.
at a distance. I think she was able to tap into something that's very authentic. And
Hmm.
so anyway, these are the ways in which I think documentary tools are helpful for creating like a perception of authenticity, but it's completely constructed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your like the fluidity, the comfort that you have with the fluidity between construction and truth.
Mm,
Because just because something isn't reality doesn't mean it's not true, which
yeah.
in an age of misinformation, disinformation, and a complete lack of media literacy, it's like, what is real? What is true? And like the terrifying hair splitting between those two things. But like as I was like watching your film and reading about it after, and like I don't normally feel compelled to engage in so many reviews, but I wanted to hear so many perspectives
Mhm.
before talking to you about like, okay, this feels like such an like any movie is a subjective experience, but watching yours felt like one of those where it's like especially subjective. And I was thinking a lot of the experience too of watching Chronology of Water recently as well.
Mhm.
An incredibly subjective experience of memory and non-linear and flashes through time. And that seemed and like that connected to in my mind of like reading you talk about I love the subtle women cinema and like watch list that you put together, like a collection of movies that you put together for your adult lead Amy Zimmer to play, sort of the facsimile of you, and thinking about you saying too of like the conversation around like movies that are personal. It's a personal movie, and
Mhm.
how often that is so much applied to women making movies. Like it's a very personal film for her
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
way that it is more, it seems like broadly applied to talking about sort of filmmakers generally. And I just thought that was, and then I was watching it was, then I'm thinking of Chronology of Water with your movie. I was like, women do be making personal, nonlinear reflections on memory, I guess.
That's so, I mean, first of all, yeah, it's moving to me how much research you've done. It's really sweet.
Oh,
Great.
it's the least you deserve.
Sure. No, but really it's like no, it makes a more interesting conversation because I feel like I think that topic is so interesting to me about why women are first of all, there's the assumption that the work is personal.
Yeah.
And then, but why is it that there is such a long history of women that are using their histories, their personal lives, their trauma? And my perception of it after having now studied it for years, I studied this, as part of my master's was about personal filmmaking, and
Hmm.
so much of the content that I researched was made by women, just happened to be made by women. And I
Hmm.
think I am in a long history of these women that are kind of yeah self what's the word I'm thinking of? Like when you tear yourself open. Uh,
Okay. I think that works too. When women tearing themselves open.
Because women, there's a vulnerability that I think is a little bit more inherent to the way that like society allows women to explore facets of themselves, but it's a two-sided coin because it also makes it so it can belittle you as an artist or make it seem like it's actually quite, oh, it's just, it's just her story, it's her
Uh-huh.
personal story, it's a journal, it's a diary, it's like a, but the craft that goes into making a personal film engaging, interesting, cinematic is sometimes downplayed because of those elements of the personal nature.
Hmm.
And someone recently brought up, oh, why do you think you were comfortable doing this early in your career when it's usually people save these kinds of films for later in their career? And I'm like,
Yeah, they're Fablemans coming way down
yeah.
at the coda.
And I was like, no, that's not true. It's usually men that wait to make stories.
Men
You know,
usually become introspective at 70. So,
I'm not even kidding. It's kind of insane. Like, and of course, those men, Spielberg, for example, has been making personal films his whole life.
absolutely.
And we just don't call them that.
Uh-huh.
Everything's been about his parents' divorce. Every single film. And like that's why I love his work.
Hmm.
And Fableman's is, the most it's marketed as personal and it's more obviously personal, but all of his work is personal. And I think that women are just not necessarily afforded that to begin with. And then on top of that, there is, yeah, I don't want to be like essentialist about it, but there is something
Hmm.
there. There's something there that I think is I would like to understand because now it's like, okay, now am I going to be expected to always make personal work? And if I
Yeah.
don't make personal work, is that
Sophy
going to,
Romvari, she makes personal films.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like
You're
how
like,
much,
okay, I'll make a personal fucking shark film then, okay?
exactly.
I
Yeah.
actually got to thinking about how much I was reading interviews of yours and you mentioned Steven Spielberg's AI came up, which is a movie I avoided for 20 years because it was exactly as sad as I was always afraid it was going to be. And I was like, I'm actually not gonna watch. It's gonna shred me.
Yeah.
But find like I'm a robot cinema enthusiast. I did a whole podcast on robot cinema for a friend who studied it with a friend who studied it in college, and we just had too much fun. And she was like, I'm gonna have to ask you to watch AI for this one. I was like, for you, for this, I must.
Yeah.
And this is so niche, but I got really fixated, like listening, watching you, reading you talk about Steven Spielberg's AI and reading how you talk about your film and films and being like, God, she'd make a really fucking good robot movie. Like
Oh, interesting.
I feel like you would like the best metaphor is robot cinema. Robot cinema is the best metaphor for anything. And talking about AI specifically, like that is the most tragic movie about childhood I think that's ever been made.
100%. Yes,
Like
absolutely. Devastating. I just rewatched it and I cried the whole time.
yeah, because then when you know it's gonna happen, then you just start crying the whole time because you're like, I don't need to wait to the end. I know exactly where we're going.
I know, and it was actually one of those films that my editor Kurt brought up when we were editing the film, and he was like, "Oh, the similarities are kind of interesting," and I hadn't thought about it in years. But there is this scene when he gets when he gets to go back to his childhood home and to spend one more day with his mom.
Oh my God, I'm gonna start crying right now. Jesus. With Teddy.
Oh God, I know. I've actually talked about this a few times in interviews, and without fail, I started to cry with this. He says when Teddy takes out the hair from his pocket, which is going to be the vessel to the. I know it's fucked, but anyway, it really was like interesting to see that this is a fantasy sequence that has played out in so many different ways in so many different
Hmm.
movies. This desire to have one more day as a child to experience your the comfort of whatever your home was
Hmm.
as a child. And I also recently saw, just by happenstance, a clip from 13 going on 30, because I guess they're doing a remake.
Yes, yes, they are. Yes.
But someone posted a clip on Twitter, and it was basically just a shot of her arriving at the house she grew up in. She walks into the house, she walks into the basement, she looks in her childhood bedroom, and it's almost shot for shot the same as Blue Heron.
Mm. Oh, wow. Whoa.
Oh. And I was like, I mean, definitely wasn't like a conscious reference, but it's just it was, and then there was that film All of Us Strangers that came
Hmm.
out years ago, and just like it's just so interesting to me that there's like 10 ideas but a million ways to do it.
Hmm.
All have the same fascinations and fixations about life and grief and love and whatever, but that's the beauty of making a film, is what's your version of that? And like,
Hmm.
Terrence Malick's Tree of Life,
Oh, God, yeah.
also has that beautiful moment at the end where the brothers get to see each other again. And so I think it's really I love those moments where I stumble upon something where I'm like, well, that must have seeped into my subconscious at some point.
Hmm.
But because we're all just sharing like 10 brain cells or whatever. And
Well, I mean that's exactly why I was compelled by the premise of the show when we started it with like that thing of just like how like the things that get in the stew, like you stop being able to necessarily isolate the specific ingredients after a long enough time, but like, the a thing we all know about soup, stew, second day stew, third day stew, it's better because it's been sitting in there and it's been marinating and commingling with all the other stuff. So when you first made it, it's like, ooh, this is good. But then you get down the line, you get more seasoned, and you're like, oh wow, we've hit peak soup. So like, and peak soup, and I that as not something I was intending to string as a metaphor, but like that, like I was reading you say too that if you had made this, like you make the movie looking back when you're younger, that if you had made this at an earlier time, it could have been an angrier movie or like a more confused movie. And I think that's it. And the short films were like the ramp up
Yeah.
to the execution with a further and sort of more advanced perspective on what came before to make this. I think that's interest. I'm so interested as I get older in softening softening of our eyes as we look back in time. And it's because we kind of like most of us do it. Not everybody, but like a lot of people do it. It happens a lot.
I think that's why I like to call it kind of it's my version of a coming of age film, because
Mm,
I don't feel like I really hit that until I was in my 20s and starting to be reflective of my past. And that is where the sense of acknowledgement starts to take shape, of like what the reality is of like coming into yourself as an adult. And yeah, so much of life in your 20s is blaming other things and other people for your circumstances. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's society, the government, whatever it is. You're just wanting to project something because you're like, wow, why is life so hard? And then I think hopefully we all come into yeah, our peak soup.
I I'm taking that with me. I am carrying it forward. I'm trying to become my peak soup.
I'm trying to become a peak soup because that's if you're lucky, you get to reflect on your own personal history, learn from it, hopefully change and adapt and evolve as a person. And, of course, everyone has been harmed by other people and has had difficult experiences to such a huge variety of degrees. But I think at a certain point, you have to take responsibility for your own experience in life. And I
Mm,
think that this film, a big part of it was just coming to terms with accepting um, my own journey and like what it is that I needed out of this process and what it is that I needed to come to terms with. And I think I spent so much of my life up until this point with all of my work that I made, but also just my preoccupation was just trying to prove to my parents that, they didn't fuck up. It's not their fault.
mm,
Like as a kid, that was a big part of my understanding of the world was if I can make them feel better, then maybe things will be easier for everybody. And,
mm,
a very childlike way to move through the world. And I think I held on to that for a long, long time. And especially because when you lose siblings, you're left with this sort of feeling like it's impossible, but it's like, how can I make up for this?
yeah.
And I think that the film was my acknowledgement that I can't
Mm,
and that I need to accept that I can't. And my parents have never expected that of me. They've never, treated me like I need to do anything special. They just want me to be happy and
mm,
healthy. And so I think that the film is really like an acknowledgement that I now need to start living for myself,
mm,
take responsibility for myself, and to not allow my past to define the fact that this did happen in my family and it is tragic and it's always going to define me, but it's not going to it can't be the factor that I place all of my blame toward,
right.
and I never have been very like you know what's the word, like woe is me
Mm.
necessarily, and maybe that doesn't come across because I make all these films.
Because I'm woeing on with cameras, I guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty woeful, but I also think I try to be self-aware enough that I learn from these experiences. And when I look back at my shorts now, I do see someone who was really quite yeah, the vulnerability shocked me a little bit when I looked
Yeah.
back at those films. That was me in my 20s, like
Yeah.
really going through it, really, really very kind of publicly, and it's interesting now because I would not do that now. I would not take that approach. But I'm happy for them to be out there because I do think that they're good reference points for like a filmmaker coming into their voice, and
Yeah.
they're yeah, I don't know, they're more naked than I realized. Yeah.
Well, and it just it's like we come to the end. I think that that was something that I really felt so loving about Crazy was even as his siblings are kind of Raymond less a bit, but still a bit. His siblings really play this role of like kind of archetypes. Like they're a bit like we don't spend a lot of time with the brothers that aren't Raymond really, and they all have a kind of character. They have a character type to fill within his story, but they don't feel like they're distilled down into something disrespectful by the end of the movie. And it is tough on the father, but it loves the father, and it makes clear that the father loves the son. And even when he does these shitty like homophobic dad things, the movie doesn't strip away the obvious love and like the yearning for a connection and the way because it has the privilege of going through like a whole lifetime arc. You get to see like, oh, here's how it started, here's how it's going, here's how it's gonna end, which is nice. But yeah, I really appreciated that even how centrally we are locked into the perspective of Zach, our main character in Crazy. It does not sacrifice the empathetic perspective
Yeah.
for the other core characters in the movie, even when it would be so easy to be like, that guy's a dick, and he's making his son's life worse. And you feel this turning point when he takes kind of Zach takes his like pilgrimage to Jerusalem. You see that moment where he looks like, I think he's in a gay bar and he sees like a specter of his dad. And you feel like his life holding him in place. You feel like his dad holding him in place. But it feels like that trip for him becomes this thing of like, I can either allow the ghost of my dad can either hold me in place or I can take responsibility for the choices that I'm going to make as me from here forward.
Wow. I really truly forgot about that section of the film.
It's a real fever dream. The Jerusalem trip is
Yeah.
a real fever dream.
Yeah. No, but that's an interesting theme to pull out from there. It's true because he does try to cover so much ground with that character and the
Yeah.
arc is uncovering. It's an immense project, that film.
Well, and I so appreciated getting to I so appreciated the happenstance of getting to watch it as a handshake with Blue Heron. So I thank you so much for presenting that film and I hope opening up to people who hadn't seen it before because it was new to me. So I hope it's new to many more. And thank you so much for taking the time after your arduous and hard won press tour to spend time with us here on Feeling Seen, Sophie. I really really do appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you are taking time among this to just be really fucking proud of yourself for what you did. That's so cool.
Thank you. I am. I'm really proud, and I'm also just so proud of everyone that worked on the movie. It's been such a communal journey, and everyone is getting their flowers. It's been so cool to watch, like all of my collaborators who are also some of my closest friends, like getting their moments, their shout outs, and a bunch of the crew got to come to New York for the premiere. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's really unbelievable. What are we calling it? Not good soup. Uh,
Peak soup.
Peak soup. It's been a peak soup weekend.
It's all come together. The ingredients have been in there for a while, and now they are really singing right as the world. You don't know the world that your movie will find. You spend so many years making it, and it feels like we were exactly ready for you this time. And I'm so glad to hear that. And yeah, congratulations on everything. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Jordan. It's so great to meet you, and this was a blast. It was really fun.
Maximum Fun.
A worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.